Salutations, fellow nerds. I'm Rick Y, and today is November 5th, 2025. I first want to address something because I may not have the same shimmer in my eye as normal as I stayed up much later than expected for a number of reasons. One of which is one that brings me great personal pride, as I was invited to a gentleman's YouTube to discuss my service with a number of other veterans of the Marine Corps. This is going to be airing on the Marine Corps' birthday, November 10th. I don't have a particularly large part because I was admittedly in the shadow of giants during this interview, but I would highly recommend y'all check out his page, as he's a historian and educates through sharing the first-hand experiences from veterans. His name is Zach Wood, and he works with a tremendously good friend of mine, Kevin McCall, with whom I served. As time marches on, the connection to the past dwindles, and this man's efforts provide a place for people to come together and gather experiences that would be otherwise lost with those who lived them. So I'm incredibly grateful for that opportunity and the work that he does. And if you can, his YouTube is called Oral Histories with Combat Veterans of America, and I will drop the link in the description below. The second reason that I stayed up super late was because it was difficult to sleep. The weather was very strange. It seems that many Americans were inundated with a flood of blue waves. In upset after upset, Republicans lost elections across the board, and MAGA is melting down. The 7 million No Kings protesters were apparently not a strong enough message, and admittedly it changed nothing as far as actual governance is concerned. That wasn't the case for the events we saw last night. Zohran Mamdani clobbered his opponents in a clear message to the establishment that the tide is turning on Zionism and xenophobia. And let's be real clear. I'm not calling all Republicans racists and xenophobes. I'm calling Republicans like this racist. If you happen to agree with them, I've got bad news if you were shooting for the not racist team. On top of that, here in California, my people showed out and Prop 50 was passed. I've already heard the lame crap about it being unconstitutional, but it never seems to be the case when Republicans do it. In fact, Gavin Newsom specifically cited Greg Abbott's doing this exact thing without a vote from the public as to why he felt it was necessary. He even went as far as to say, if Texas stops, then we will. Texas didn't stop. Cope. We are playing by the same rules that Republicans chose to change. If you don't like it, stop being deceptive and weird. I don't know what else to tell you. Another really solid win was in Virginia, where Democrats swept all of the statewide races to include seating the first female governor in that state's history. Eat your heart out, Nick Fuentes, you weaselly little shit. But what was really interesting is actually the fact that they flipped the political party leadership as well. Mikey Sherrill held their position in New Jersey, while Democrats in Pennsylvania secured another decade of liberal justices on the bench. All of last night's conclusions created what may be what is called a bellwether for future elections. Ask me back when I was in high school, just in the aftermath of 9/11, whether we should be voting for socialism anywhere in this country. It would have been laughed at. Now, not only are politicians leaning into the title of socialist, some are self-admitting and winning down-ballot races on that ticket. This is why the intelligent conservatives are actually more nervous and less talkative on this topic this morning. On top of that, I'm finding out now that Mississippi has also flipped 2 red seats, which breaks the supermajority in the mythical mandate that they've been so very proud of since November. You see, there was a very real momentum in the 2024 elections behind 2 distinct things that pushed things over the edge. We all have our opinions, but the data is clear. Americans voted for lower prices and made clear their disdain of the treatment of Palestinians in Gaza. And what I mean by this is that people were motivated to vote in favor of the person who was promising to lower prices on day one. And those who chose not to vote or vote third party due in no small part to the Zionist genocide taking place in the Middle East. On top of that, demographically, Trump secured a huge swath of Latino voters, a goal that conservatives have been dreaming of for decades as they tried to paint their opposition as reminiscent of dictatorial rulers that Latinos came here to escape. So what happened? In the past 6 months, costs have gone up and the government is now shut down because Republicans are refusing to extend the ACA subsidies, which will inevitably cause health insurance rates to skyrocket. People are getting their open enrollment letters in the mail as we speak. demonstrating to them the difference in cost. So trying to convince them that it's because Democrats are just trying to give health care to illegals, it's not working. Inflation has been ticking up gradually since April. Tariffs are causing turmoil in the stock market and on shelves in stores. Inflation is actually back up to 3%, which is right where it was back in January when he took office. So as far as Trump's campaign promise to drop prices, Republicans are doing the opposite. Indeed, as we speak, the Fed dropped interest rates because signs of stagflation are starting to creep in. They still only have concepts of a plan as far as replacement of Obamacare is concerned, while their leader fights the courts to try and withhold food money from starving people. And when it comes to the war in Gaza, the Republicans have only exacerbated the conflict as the West Bank is now being encroached upon. The ceasefire went upside down within hours, and Trump is discussing how he and Netanyahu can redevelop the area so as to profit in the aftermath of their inhumane atrocities. Hamas is still functioning, and while some of the hostages have been returned to their families, I would ask those who think that the hostages are the most important part of this whole mess why the IDF was sniping them as they tried to escape. I guess mission creep leniency is only owed to Judeo-Christian oppressors. So, not much has changed as far as Western ideology is concerned, am I right? Finally, that other fact about Latino voters as well. Trump did something this past election cycle that was a little shocking. He was able to convince a large swath of Latino voters that he would be their best option. Within the first days of taking office, however, he has redirected that energy toward demonizing, criminalizing, and unconstitutionally targeting those very people. They're using oppressive force and coercion to carry this out, and they're harming communities, they're breaking apart families, and they're banishing into the ether anyone that they deem too Hispanic. We told you they weren't going to stop at the violent criminals, and we were right. Because of this, because of the speed with which Trump and Stephen Miller were willing to turn ICE into the modern Gestapo, Republicans have actually taken a huge loss when it comes to the work that they put in to convince a voter bloc they've chased for decades. Trump and his administration burned the trust between the voters they've worked desperately to achieve within the first months of this term. The problem is trust is much harder to regain than it is to gain, and the energy that Republicans have allowed to culminate in the ranks of their opposition is why we are where we are. What sucks for them is that this is only going to cause Trump to probably double down and throw gas on the fire that's already burning in those who will be his biggest hurdle in 2026. And I absolutely welcome his zeal for short-sighted chaos. It isn't cost-effective for his base, and it isn't cost-effective for his opposition. The GOP is also painting itself into corners with the Epstein documents. The biggest threat to modern traditional conservatism is an anti-Tea Party movement. And from what I can tell, the No Kings movement is gaining more traction than MAGA wants to come to terms with. And I couldn't be happier. Anyway, don't be a stranger. Y'all come back now. You hear?